Hello and welcome back to the Book Love Podcast. I'm your host, Matt from Ohio, and this is the monthly reading wrap up for, I guess, what we read in June of 2026. Well, sort of. This month, and hopefully each month moving forward, is not just going to be me anymore. My lovely significant other and much better half, Elisabeth, said she's going to join me for the reading wrap up episodes. And what that means is, firstly, you don't have to just listen to my boring butt anymore. But secondly, the quantity of books each month is going to increase. The variety of books is going to increase because we read vastly different types of stuff. And sometimes, instead of talking about every book we've read, because we're going to have so many to choose from, we're going to be cherry picking and highlighting the ones we want to recommend, the ones we want people to avoid, et cetera, et cetera. Here is what you can expect from each of us in this monthly reading wrap up, right? We're going to be highlighting upwards of half a dozen books, and each book is going to have the title, the author, a spoiler-free synopsis, personal rating and recommendation, and any questions that they might have. So, and we're going to try to do that in all 5 minutes or less per book. So we're going to be pretty quick, and it is going to be very, very lovely. But before we get into the episode proper, I am going to welcome my significant other, Elisabeth. I'm tired. I just drove for 4 hours. We just got back from Indianapolis. We were at the Dave Matthews Band Deer Creek weekend.
Yeah.
And it was like going to church last night. It was fan-freaking-tastic.
It was a good concert. It was my 5th concert.
Your 5th? So that means my
7th?
my 7th?
I think.
Something like that. Yeah. But let's talk books. Before we get into the books that we read, I think it would be fun if we kind of talked what we're currently reading and what we're planning to read next.
Well, I am currently reading The Giver of Stars. So this is set in the 1930s in Kentucky, and it is about the mobile library that Eleanor Roosevelt set up across the country. The story focuses specifically on a small county in Kentucky, but this was a major um, program that Eleanor Roosevelt put together because she wanted to help with literacy rates across the country. So it's about several women who are the librarians for the program and what they learn along the way. I'm only maybe 20% through it, just got started. So I'm curious to see how these women interact, what they learn together. Seems like some of them were eager to be librarians and others were voluntold. So we'll see how that develops.
Right on. That's interesting, and it's very different from what I'm currently reading. I am currently reading Lee's Lieutenants, which is an American Civil War book, but it's not fiction, or I guess it's technically nonfiction. But instead of just describing the war, what it is it was back in like the 20s or 30s, a journalist set about writing a book about the Confederate war effort. And what he ended up doing was writing all about the war, but only from the point of view of the Confederacy. And very specifically, he wrote it so nobody knew what the Federals were doing. So it's literally from the Confederates' point of view. And it is specifically about the chain of command.
Okay.
So it's not about getting into the nitty gritty of the battles. It's actually about administrative stuff. What makes a good leader? What makes a bad leader? How did they reorganize the army multiple times during everything? You know, a lot of people were killed during the war. So how do you replace that leadership? What qualities do you look for? What sets one leader apart from another? Stuff like that. And so it's super interesting. I think the book is like 1,000 pages, but only 800 of those pages are actually stuff you read. The other 200 are like index and
citations.
buy bibliography and crap. I think I'm somewhere around 670 of 800. So I got 1864 and 1865 left, and it'll go pretty quick. But it's definitely different from all the other Civil War books I've read.
And you've read a lot.
And I've read a lot. Yeah. What's like the next 2 to 3 books on your TBR?
Let's see. I just got this book, Educated, from the library. I think I'm on a theme of literacy and how that changes someone's life. But it's about I don't remember the main character's name, but she comes from a small town and finds her way to Harvard and the things that she learns along the way. And I'm excited to see her take on that.
Is that the TBR?
Yes.
Okay. Um, that sounds interesting. Yeah, that's sort of, you're definitely on a kick. I have 4 books on my TBR. Two mysteries, 1 romance, and I don't know what Kurt Vonnegut is. We'll just start with Kurt Vonnegut. I want to read another Kurt Vonnegut book. So I've got Breakfast of Champions, and I think that book is from the perspective of a fictional writer named Kilgore Trout, who is in all, like, most of Kurt's books. And I know it's going to be satire, going to have big commentary on society. So I'm looking forward to that. He's an awesome writer. The romance that I'm going to read is Soft Flannel Hank by Eliza MacArthur, who we found at the Crozet Book Fest in October of 2025.
That was fun.
From what I understand, it's like a romance that takes place in our world, but there's sort of uh, quasi paranormal, almost fantasy elements, like vampires and fae,
Oh,
but like they kind of live amongst the humans. And anyways, I think there's the main character is going to be a female, and I think something happens obviously to propel her to go to the Pacific Northwest, and she falls in love with, or it starts the romance with I'm assuming some dude named Hank. I don't know for sure. Uh, and then the 2 mysteries are both by Simone St. James. I don't know a whole lot about them, but Simone St. James writes paranormal, like true crime mystery novels.
okay.
The first one is called The Sundown Motel, and the other one is called Murder Road. I think the Sundown Motel takes place in like New York, and Murder Road takes place kind of out west. So should be pretty interesting, and hope I get through all of those in July. I think we can get to what we read in June. My lady, what was the first book you read in June?
The first book I finished was The New Guys by Meredith Bagby. This was published back in 2023, so fairly recent.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled this because I was so excited about the Artemis 2 mission earlier this year. Uh, After that ended, I wanted to keep things going, so I read Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, very popular book. And The New Guys was actually one of the source materials that Taylor Jenkins Reid used in order to write Atmosphere.
Okay.
And since I loved Atmosphere so much, I thought, well, let's find out more about the actual history. So, The New Guys is nonfiction, and it is about the space shuttle program. So, not the Gemini and Apollo capsules, but the shuttle that started in the 70s and 80s, the delivery truck to the stars. So the distinguishing factor with the shuttle program was that was the first time that NASA started including or opened up their astronaut candidate program to non-military members, and with that opening up, it also included women and people of color for the first time. So if you enjoy anything with history, science, politics, that this was a great combination of the three. Meredith Bagby told it all from a very storytelling perspective, so you really got to know the individuals. If I wouldn't worry if you're not too into science, she's not going to break it down into, for example, all of my material science homework problems. Although part of me was excited for that. I did enjoy failure analysis. Um, But yeah, it starts from the beginning of the shuttle program, goes through the Challenger
When you
disaster,
say the beginning of the shuttle program, is that the 1970s, or is that before that?
the end of the
Yeah,
1970s.
yeah, okay.
So they were testing out the shuttle for the very first time. It was a completely new design for space travel. Um, Previously, there was a capsule design that
Hmm.
NASA used, and that was actually what Artemis used as well. But the shuttle looks more like the plane that we're
Hmm.
used to, so flying, except the wings work a little differently. But it is massive, hence they called it a delivery truck. So it transported all of the satellites that we've placed up in orbit since the 70s and 80s. If you are familiar with the Hubble Space Telescope, for example, that was put there by the shuttle.
I know that our current administration has been defunding NASA. So I do want to ask, does this book help like explain why the NASA program is so actually like vital to the military and everyday life and stuff like that? Or does it not go in that direction? Is it a little bit more socially oriented?
It covers more history and the people in the
Okay.
program, but you do get more of an understanding for how does NASA fit within some of the other agencies. I know there's been a push to incorporate an actual like space agency as far as military operations go, but NASA has a long history of, for example, um, coordinating with the Department of Defense. That was also a big push for the program with um, flying as frequently as they did because the Department of Defense wanted to get a bunch of satellites up in orbit in order to help us with the Cold War and all of our observation efforts, for better or for worse. But that push from a military and political standpoint is part of what led to the Challenger and Columbia disasters because they were flying so frequently that sometimes they barely had time to turn things around. Like they had 3 shuttles, in the fleet. One would land, and, they'd take a few bits and pieces from that shuttle and transfer it over to the next shuttle, and they were moving it really quickly. And that speed is part of the reason why, a lot of the engineers who were calling out things that we now know led to, the Challenger disaster,
Huh.
that's part of why that wasn't addressed.
What would you what did you rate this one?
Well, this was a 5 for me. As someone with an engineering background, someone who enjoys history, and then there's just the human component. Technology is cool to read about, but really technology doesn't mean much without humans.
Yep.
So the combination of all 3 was excellent in my opinion. If you enjoyed anything about the Artemis 2 mission, highly recommend. 5 out
Is,
of 5 for me.
is there anybody you would not recommend read this?
It's hard. I think a lot of people could find something about it that they would enjoy. Again, whether it's history, politics, science, you could find something about it to appreciate.
Okay.
Even if you just read a section of it, because being that it's history, you could just decide to focus on the training part of it, or when they were actually deploying all of the satellites, or when we started um, collaborating more with the Soviet Union once, or the Russians once the Soviet Union fell apart. So I think you could really find a good part for any interest you might have.
And I'm assuming since Atmosphere is like the book of the moment, or at least it was a few weeks ago, this is a natural segue.
Yes, if
Yeah,
you read Atmosphere, you can definitely get an understanding for how Taylor Jenkins Reid put together some of the characters based on actual individuals who are in the space shuttle program, which I thought was
that's
fascinating.
cool.
What was your first book that you read this month, Matt?
Well, I'm gonna take a little bit of a detour. I didn't actually read this in June, but I revisited it heavily, heavily, heavily. Um, I actually think I might have read it like 6 months ago. It's called Sun Seekers by Rachel McRady, who's another author from the Virginia area that we met. Um, and I revisited Sun Seekers heavily because I recommended it to your mother, who finally got around to reading it, and I decided to have a conversation with your mom about it. Shameless plug. That's coming to you. That's coming to the channel on Monday, July 13th. Great, great book. Great book. I'm actually going to kind of, so that I don't give any spoilers, I'm probably going to read a little bit of. So Sunseekers is a story that follows 6-year-old Gracie Lynn, and she is trying to save her grandfather from the worm in his brain that comes alive at night and slowly kills him.
Oh, wow.
This is a lovely analogy, if you can't tell, for sundowners, dementia. And so Gracie and her, her mom tells her this story, and in her 6-year-old brain, she thinks, well, if I can just keep my grandfather in the sun at all times, this nocturnal worm can't hurt him.
Infallible logic.
So she breaks her granddaddy out of the old folks' home, and they go on an adventure to seek the sun so that she can save her granddad. And so obviously, while that point of view is happening, you have a parallel story of her mother and estranged, divorced father reuniting in an effort to try to find their daughter. So you get a lot of those dynamics and everything at the same time.
Okay.
It's kind of like part family drama. It's very sweet, loving, and hopeful, but it is about caregiving and dementia and all of those things. But it's not sad. Yeah.
Well, what would you rate it after all of that?
This is one of my, that I'm like a stickler for 5-star books.
Yes.
I think that a story can be as perfectly written as possible, and I still don't give it a 5-star. 5-star books have to say something about the world. They have to touch my heart and my soul. They have to change my worldview. Like they have to go that next level. This is a 5-star read. Easy peasy, without a doubt.
What did you end up talking to my mama about? One sentence to help preview that conversation you had. Since this was a 5 out of 5 read and it did change you, what's the biggest takeaway?
In the book, the mom has a friend who helps take care of Gracie and blah, blah, blah. But that friend doesn't know anything about the caregiving and the grandfather and whatever. And that character very specifically resonated with me a lot, because when you and I started dating 13 years ago, your mom was at that point taking care of your grandma.
Yeah.
But like even you didn't really understand the gravity of what was happening. And now that I have the relationship that I have with your family, I don't know about you or your sister or your brother or anything, but like I feel a little bit of guilt, not crippling guilt, just a little bit, that I wasn't more present in some of those moments. And like, I know that's stupid guilt, because I was just a stupid boyfriend that was trying to take her daughter away from her. And it's not like I should have been involved. But anyways, I wanted to hear that story from your mom. And the entire time I read the book, I thought of your mom. And when I finished the book, I immediately bought a copy and drove it over to their house. And it took her like 6 months to pick it up. But anyway, so the conversation I had with my mother-in-law was all about the story of taking care of her mother and what caregiving does in real life, and what being on this end of somebody with dementia is like. Any advice for other people going through that kind of a thing. It's very touching. It's like a son-in-law meets mother-in-law type episode, but it is for the greater. I think it's for the greater world as well. It's pretty cool.
I know I need to read it soon.
Yes, we're gonna have to get you a copy, because I don't think I actually own a copy.
I'll borrow it from my mom again.
Yeah. Yeah. So that episode will be coming out on Monday, July 13th. Well, actually, 1 week from when this episode is out. So 2 thumbs up. Let's jump into the second book that you wanted to highlight, Elisabeth. Where are we going next?
The next book I read is called Sandwich by Catherine Newman. I had no idea about this book going into it. Not something I would have found on my own. This came from the Evolvery Book Club list. It was one of the books chosen for our next book club event. So I read it. I read it for book club. It follows a
Well, before you tell me what it's about, is this more nonfiction? What is it?
This is set in present day. It's fiction, but realistic,
Okay.
modern, happening today.
The one of the genre-less fiction type books.
Yes,
Not fantasy, not mystery, not it's just
correct.
sort of story. Let's go.
Yes.
Okay. So what is Sandwich about?
The main character is a woman named Rocky, short for Rachel, and it's
Of course.
I've never heard that that shorthand for Rachel, so that was kind of interesting. I didn't put that together right away with the book either. Um, it is set during the family's annual vacation to Cape Cod, and she has two adult children, and her two older parents also join. Honestly, it reminded me a lot of our family trips to Hilton Head.
Okay.
So even though I am not the same age, I don't have kids. I'm not caring for aging parents right now. It was still very relatable insofar as the family dynamics with everybody arriving at the cottage that they stay in. They immediately have some plumbing issues. We got to figure out where everyone is sleeping. Those were all immediately familiar and kind of funny to read from a third person perspective of, oh yeah, we've done that. That's been us. um, I think the name Sandwich, it's kind of a unique name.
Mhm.
If it's
We're
about
talking like
summer
peanut butter and
vacation,
jelly, or
right? If it's about summer vacation, where does this come into play? And you get a lot of the thoughts from the main character while she's making the sandwiches that they're going to take to the beach.
okay.
Um,
So like that is that like a little bit of a through line for the narrative?
I think so. Most of the story is about Rocky just thinking about what their annual vacation has meant to her over the years, what it was like when they were a lot younger, when the kids were little, what it means today, what is it going to look like in the future. And oftentimes, as she's pondering these things, it's while she's making the sandwiches as they're going to take them out to the beach for their beach day.
Would you term this or classify this or categorize this or some verbiage of like a an examination of generational stuffs?
I do think that there's an element of that as well because the main character thinks about the evolution of her life. She compares what her relationship with her kids was like then, what her relationship with her husband was like then,
Okay.
to today. What is it going to look like in the future? Same with her parents, and also I think in addition to literal sandwiches, I think the title, she's the
The
sandwich
sandwich
generation.
generation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
She's thinking both ahead and back.
I kind of like that.
So
Smart.
the family dynamics were instantly relatable, and sometimes throughout the book, I would have moments of again kind of wondering, did my mom ever think about this while we were on vacation together?
You should have her read it and we'll have a
We
podcast
should.
episode again. Would you rate this masterpiece, this of a title?
I rated this as a 4. I thought it was a surprising read. It was very easy. It was funny. Again, not something I would have pulled myself, but the fact that I enjoyed it, even though it was a complete surprise to me, I was essentially just told, "Here, we're reading this."
Okay.
The fact that I did enjoy it, reading it for
Who would you not recommend read something like this?
it does touch on some personal family planning type of conversation. So maybe if you have some sensitivities to those discussions, um, maybe hold off. What was the next book that you read in June?
The most recent book I finished was, I guess, full disclosure, it was an ARC book that I gladly, wonderfully accepted. It is called Not All Dragons by a Canadian author named David Lee, and it was David Lee's debut fantasy novel. He published multiple books of poetry before this, so this was his first foray into the fantasy and I guess fiction world.
Poetry to fantasy is an interesting progression.
Yes and no. I see a lot of through line with it, but it is also kind of jarring. In fantasy, I think that poetry is a huge vehicle in fantasy for world building, for prophecy, for how characters come across history. If you think about like Lord of the Rings, like all of the songs that they sing in the taverns, that's world building, that's ambiance, but it's also just poetry. You get a lot of prophecy and it's like twice and twice shall he be marked and blah, 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 blah. You get all this iambic pentameter stuff. And because the world is old and ancient, when people come across scraps of historical information, it'll always be like a fragment of something, much like what I did in college, where when you're reading ancient philosophy, like the pre-Socratics, they all wrote in what we call a proem, which is prose, but in poetry format.
Okay.
And but you only have snippets. You never ever have a full work anymore because they'll have been lost in time. So like in fantasy, poetry is also, um, but also David did tell me when I interviewed him, hashtag interview coming to the channel on 2 weeks from the 13th. So July 27th. He did tell me that the way he wrote the novel was he would write mini poems and then kind of turn that into paragraph format.
Okay.
As a way to tell stories. But what is it about? Because who cares about all, the story is of a male named Rhys. Rhys, of course, Rhys.
Okay.
Like short for Rhysand. It's like Italian or Irish or whatever. And Rhys wakes up severely injured. And he has absolutely no memories. And immediately he meets Delia, who is a mermaid, and mermaids can transition from water to land, and she has extremely acute senses. She can like smell things and see things and sense things that normal creatures can't, and she has no idea what Rhys is. And because Rhys doesn't have any memories, Rhys doesn't
He
know
doesn't know.
what he is. And very specifically, he doesn't know what he is, let alone who he is. And so Delia decides to help him. And together they set out on a journey to figure out what Rhys is. And about a third of the way through the book, they get that answer. But now Rhys doesn't know who he is, let alone how he feels on the inside, if that can ever match what he looks like on the outside, and therefore can he actually fit into the group of what he is.
Okay.
I read it. It's a great fantasy story, but I also read it as a huge allegory to self-identity and being othered and dealing with bigotry and things of that nature. Yeah.
Well, looking forward to hearing that episode.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to interview the author. He's a great guy, and I talked to him about the book a little bit, but more than that, I kind of departed from the book and we talked about what it means. Because David Lee is an LGBTQ author. He does not like being classified by that, but understands that that's how you sell books. So I took that opportunity to try to understand better about what it means to be othered and have to defend your very existence and fight for just normalcy every day. What love and acceptance look like, and things like that.
A lot of
So
things that maybe some of us don't have to think about every day and therefore take for granted.
yes, yeah. Like I admitted to David that what does it mean? I asked him the question like, what does it mean to have to ask yourself, what am I? As somebody, I've only ever asked myself, who am I throughout life? I've always known what I am. I'm a white dude. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? So like, what is that like? And we had the conversation of, I'm very privileged to have never asked that question of myself, or whatever. What goes, like, that's the kind of conversation we had. It was very powerful. I was very privileged to be in the position to ask those questions and get those answers. It was great. And we did it during Pride Month. The episode is coming out a month later, but whatever.
Well, would you like to rate it now, or perhaps save that for
I
the
did not
episode?
rate it when talking to the author. Here's my thing, right? Um, in my mind, this is two different ratings.
Okay.
That sounds really weird, right? If we're talking about rating this book purely from the overarching story, the messaging, the allegorical perspective, I think it's like a 4.5. Really, really strong um creatures, message, story. If I'm going to rate it purely from like a writing standpoint and how the story was told to me, um, how I like, I think it's a little bit lower than that. It might be like a 3. It's a very middle of the road storytelling, but then you combine those two things together, and I think it's like a 3.75, 4 as a whole package. I think this author has a lot of area to grow as a fiction writer,
Fun. And you said it's a debut novel, so a lot of promise.
but the story and being packaged very strong, unique creatures, interesting world, and I know that there's going to be another book set in this world at some point. So
That's exciting.
yeah, pretty cool. Um,
Is there anyone who shouldn't read it?
in my idealistic mind, no, but I do know that there are homophobic and transphobic assholes in the world, and they should probably stay away from books like this. What was the third book that you read in June?
Florence Adler Swims Forever, by
Okay.
Rachel Beanland.
Florence Adler's, that sounds like a specific name. Is that a real person, or is this just complete fiction?
The author actually did base this on a distant relative in her family, which I found out after I finished it. This was a random find on the library shelf. I make reservations all the time. Just
She's not kidding, y'all. Downstairs at any given time, we have a stack of books like this from the library. She might only read 2 of them, 1 of them, but she's super curious. We just have like 10 books from the library at any given time. It's crazy.
yeah, usually anywhere from 6 to 10 books. I want flexibility. It's the TBR question is always hard. I have a long list of books I'd like to read, but I need to be in the mood to read them. There are things that have been on my TBR for years, and I just haven't for one reason or another because it needs to fit. It needs to be something that I'm eager to read.
So is this something that you went into the library and saw in like the Get Lucky section, or how did you find this one?
This was a Get Lucky section.
Right
I
on.
went in to pick up some reservations, and I always stop by the Get Lucky section, and it was sitting out there. Presumably, I'm assuming the swim in the cover type or in the title was probably the reason it was pulled and put on the Get Lucky
Yeah.
section. Just it's summer. So this is set in the 1930s
Okay.
in Atlantic Beach. So again, it feels like the perfect sort of summer setup. But if you're looking for a chill summer book, this was not that.
Okay. Why not?
So the book actually starts out with a tragedy,
Oh,
which when you read the summary, you know what's going to happen, but I thought it was going to happen later in the book.
can
But
you tell us what that tragedy is, or is that spoilers? No spoilers.
uh, Florence Adler succumbs to an accident. She is training to
Whilst swimming?
yes,
Oof. I
she
know how you feel about drowning.
she's training to swim the English Channel,
Okay.
which was a very popular thing back in the 1930s. And the previous summer, another woman had completed the swim of the English Channel, and so
Mm.
Florence Adler wants to do the same. And so she's training, and she's going to have an accident, but the book just starts out with that.
Okay.
So really, the book is actually about Florence Adler's surviving family members and their reactions.
Coming to terms and dealing with moving forward.
Yes.
Mm.
So you learn a lot about her parents, and her parents were immigrants actually at one point. Had set up businesses, and they've been living there for quite some time. She has an older sister who's married, expecting another child, and Florence's mom is very concerned that Florence's death may impact her sister and potentially her sister's unborn baby. So they all agree to not speak of Florence's passing,
Okay.
and each one of the family members processes this differently because it's 2 months that they have to essentially lie to Florence's sister about this, and kind of an interesting perspective on how would parents choose to protect their children, and then how do
Yeah.
they simultaneously grieve. Um,
I've always found that to be a very fascinating topic because, like, I don't have we are parents, but we were kids, and it's always interesting to me, like, how much childhood trauma, um, or unrealistic expectations, or whatever word you want to put there, do we as people impart on our children in the name of protecting them, and is that therefore actually protection when they're adults and they have to make their own decisions and life choices and whatnot? That's fascinating, chicken or egg kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. So, yeesh, woof.
yeah,
Um, is this a sad book, or is this more of like a hopeful kind of message?
neither.
Neither. Okay.
It felt just very realistic. Like that, this is life. There was not exactly a resolution per se. Um, we don't even get to meet Florence's new nephew or niece at the end. The book just kind of ends,
Ends
which I'm assuming the author probably did as part of
more of the this is
replicating.
life.
Well, this is life, but maybe that's also what happened with her family's life,
Mm,
since the main character is based on a distant relative of hers.
okay.
So
Would you rate this sucker?
I rated it as a 3. It was kind of interesting to read, not at all what I was expecting. I don't know that I would try to read something like it again. Maybe I would. Of the 3 books that I read this month, this is not the one that I'm most excited to share with everyone else.
I hear you. I hear you. I've read those. Um, and actually, those kinds of books are why I've started doing these monthly reading wrap ups, because you want to review books, but it's like you can't pick 20 to 30 minutes of content for a book that, and also you don't want to poo poo people overly. So I hear you.
It was
I
written
hear you.
well, but just not my favorite.
Um, any like recommendations or lack of recommendations you want to throw out there? Or is it just is what it is? And you want to move on?
I think it just is what it is.
True to life.
What was your 3rd book to the month?
The third book that I read is actually a reread. As you know, I host another podcast with people from all around the world, and we are doing a reread of a epic dark fantasy romantasy series called The Blade of Shadows. And in May we read the origin novel, and then here in June we read book 1 of that series. So this is actually the third time that I'm reading it. The first time I picked it up in order to go to Hilton Head with your family
On a whim.
on a whim. It was just at the library, and I just decided that I thought the cover looked cool, and I was going to pick up a stupid romantasy book so that I could day drink and read with, and it was not good. And I have videos on this channel about it's not good. And the author contacted me and she goes, "Which version did you read?" And I was like, "Whatever version the library has." And she goes, "Oh, that's probably version 1. I recently published version 2." And version 2 has like more point of POVs, more chapters for the enemies to lovers crap. And so she's like, would you read this? And would you do a buddy read with your sister-in-law, Becca, on the channel? And so that's what we did. Find that playlist, super fun. And with the additional POVs, that it was better.
Further the story.
And so this is the third time I've reread it. And yeah. So it's called Timeborne by the amazing Sara Samuels. Now that I've read the entire series, I think it's amazing. And I guess kind of summarizing this book is sort of actually kind of an intro to the entire series. It's an epic fantasy series where people born during a solar eclipse, but also the convergence of black holes is called the eclipsarum obscurum or something like that, right? They are born with time travel capabilities, and they are called Timeborns. And this book is the story of Olivia James. She's 24 years old when she finds out that she can time travel, and she's forced to time travel in the beginning of the book, and she's sent back to ancient Rome, where events unfold, and she is forced to live with an ex-gladiator and current guard to the emperor. His name is Roman, super sexy, but also has his own trauma, and they begin undergoing like an enemies to lovers thing. But it's within an entire big series, and there's this huge other story being told that you're not aware of until you're rereading it. And it's like super cool, spicy, fantasy. It's kind of dark. There's battle and sex, and dude, it's pretty good. It'll get you going,
I know you obviously have quite a breakdown on your other channel, but what would you rate it?
The time when I read version 1, I gave it a 2.75. It was below average. You know what I'm saying?
Specific.
Mm-hmm. The second time I read it, it went up 1 point to a 3.75. Better story because of the additional POVs and stuff like that. The romance felt more real. The sex didn't feel so forced. Blah 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 blah. This time that I'm reading it, this third time where I have the entire context of the entire series, it's easily a 4.25.
Okay.
I don't want to like rate it higher because there are other books in the series that are rated higher, but this is sort of like on a par with the rest of the series now. Mm-hmm.
Lots of room for more good stories out of it.
Yes, the series oscillates between romantasy and dark fantasy, and then kind of a convergence of both.
Is there anyone you think wouldn't like the series?
Like if I think that this book has a little something for everybody, as long as you like the fantasy genre and you're okay with reading sex. Not smut. This is not porn. Every single sex scene in the series furthers the characters in the plot, right? It is for a purpose, more or less. You might not know what the purpose is until later, but if as long as you're okay with reading that, I think this book is for you. If you do not like the fantasy genre, don't even try. Like, you know what I mean? But in terms of fantasy, I think it's really, really great. And I've read a lot of fantasy over the years.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Some good books for this month.
Good books for this month.
Starting the summer out strong.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that is our reading wrap up for June 2026. Elisabeth and I will be back in 1 month to do this all over again. Yeah, you still game?
I'll be here.
Cool. In the meantime, please stay tuned to the Book Love Podcast channel because we have some like great content coming up. So mark your calendars. It's the summer, so a little bit less content, but like I think that's a good thing. Quality over quantity, right? So next week, 1 week from when this video comes out on Monday, July 11th, I'm in conversation with my mother-in-law, Denise, about her lived experience as a dementia caregiver for her mother. And it's a little bit of a family conversation as we are talking about Sunseekers by Rachel McRady. And then 2 weeks after that, on Monday, June 27th, I'm going to be in conversation with author David Lee about his lived experience in the LGBTQ plus community and world, and what that's like for him, but also what can we do about acceptance and understanding for those who have never lived it. As I get together with him to talk to him about his debut fantasy novel, Not All Dragons. But for now, I think this is a good place to put a bookmark in our journey. I do want to know what you read last month. Leave us comments, send us emails, let us know. And what'd you think of what we read? Are you going to add any of those to your TBR? Have you read them before? Does what we think jive with you? All our contact information is in the description down below. And I guess have a wonderful month, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.